How are you? Let me get out of this bleeding sun. I want to talk about the idea of a pagan revival, but in a modern sense. It's no use us going back to the past and, you know, barring a complete collapse in Western society that sends us back into the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, there's absolutely no chance of that kind of a pagan revival where we end up like our ancestors and so on. So we've got to approach these things in a different way. We've got to, let me get by the ivy, it's nice and pagan that. We've got to approach the concept in a modern way that we can survive it with inside our own cultures today inside Western society. Now, what do we have to work with? We have common archetypes. Very, very good. So we have the Germanic, Celtic, pagan, Indo-European, Vedic archetypes which we can work with. So, for instance, Thor, Indra, Dunnar is a thunder god. So that's a classic. So you could take the archetype of Thor or Dunnar or the idea of a thunder god. You could take that to the bank. Now, that's the way we do it. We cannot trust the Eddas, the Norse sagas, or the Celtic mythological cycle because they're written down by monks and Christians who editorialize it to bring all kinds of Christian nonsense into it. So the first thing is a pantheon of archetypal gods and goddesses within a pagan polyistic tradition that we can take to the bank and understand and bring into our world. What's the second one? The second one is to not tolerate Christianity in any form being allowed in the pagan groups. This is why I don't want anything to do with churchy groups like Astura. I don't want any Christians in there, and do not tolerate any Christians who enter into these groups. They're like a mind virus. What they do is they immediately start saying things like Christ consciousness and all this sort of shit, and the next thing you know, you have the worshipping priests down at the church. We can't be doing this, okay? We have to treat Christians and Abrahamics as a whole, especially Christians and Muslims, the same way that Jews see the National Socialists. That's how we should see them. There's no accommodation there, none at all, zero. I won't have anything to any group that where someone talks about Christ consciousness. I'm seeing that in Irish, so-called Irish Druidic groups. There's some guy talking about who is the real Jesus, and you know, is Jesus a shamanic Druid? You should throw these fuckers right out. And if anyone tries to sell you that on a message forum or anything else, you just get rid of them. You walk and go somewhere else. Thirdly, a very important one is to not become a self-conscious pagan. And I'm talking about blinging yourself up, walking, I'm a pagan. Do not become an evangelical Christian, pagan or heathen. This is another reason I can't stand these Nordic Astura groups. They're full of Americans who have now, they've gone from either atheism or they've got Christianity to evangelical heathenism, and they make me sick. That's the Christian mind virus still in there. Don't tolerate it under no circumstances. So for one, a pantheon of archetypes that we can all relate to, that's common across Indo-European, heathen, Celtic, Germanic, Vedic archetypes and so on. Very easy to do. Secondly, a rejection of any kind of Christian interference or Christian thinking, especially anyone who uses anyone who shows up in your pagan group going on about Christ consciousness. That's the door. That's the door, buddy. Down to the mosque or down to the Catholic Church. You don't belong here. And thirdly, becoming a pagan in your heart, in your consciousness, in your sense of being, without being a cosplay Stevie Nicks type witchy poo or some guy walking around with a sword that was made in the Japanese sweatshop. It doesn't work like that. The pagan revival is here. The pagan revival is real. There's only two things that can destroy it: a Christian interference and commercialism. We reject both. It's really quite easy, and let's begin a proper dialogue from this point on how we can actually bring these ideas I've just mentioned into manifestation. When I say things like we don't tolerate Christian interference inside pagan groups, I'm not talking about hatred of Christians or hatred of Muslims. Good luck to them. That's their thing. But we can't let them near us because their instinctual desire is to slaughter us. And if you haven't learned that by now, you've no right calling yourself a pagan or a heathen.